Friedrich Glasl is an Austrian conflict researcher. Experts worldwide use his 9-stage model of conflict escalation to determine the stage of conflict. The 9-stage model of conflict escalation is presented in Friedrich Glasl's book Konfliktmanagement in 1997, published in German. An English edition is available in Confronting Conflict, which was published in 1999. Friedrich Glasl looks at conflict escalation as a descent into ever deeper, primitive, and inhumane forms of conflict. He believes that if you do not make an effort, a conflict can escalate to levels where it costs on the human, the organizational, as well as the economic level. It is like a swamp. You slide further and further down and get more and more stuck in the conflict. Rather than seeking the cause in the individual, the model emphasizes how there is an internal logic to conflict relationships, stemming from the failure of benign ways of handling contradictory interests and standpoints. In general, the model consists of 3 main phases. Each phase has 3 stages. The entire model consists of 9 stages. They are sometimes also called stairs. You could say, when the conflict escalates, we are sliding down the stairs. In phase 1, which covers the first 3 stages, the conflict is about the issue. We can easily have different opinions on the issue. The issue is the center of the differences, not the parties involved. We are trying to create a situation where both parties win. In phase 2, which covers stages 4 through 6, the issue is no longer at the center of the conflict. The counterparties are. The 2 parties in the conflict feel that the other counterparty is an idiot, incompetent, and so on. There can only be a solution at one counterparty's expense. We are trying to create a situation where we win and they lose. In phase 3, which covers the last 3 stages, the conflict is so profound that we are now trying to destroy our counterparty, even if it causes us losses. It's actually a form of war. Never mind that we lose an order, as long as our counterparty is hurt more than ourselves. We are prepared to accept losing the conflict around the issue as long as our counterparty loses more. It is pure self-destruction. Now we shall review each stage of the 9 stages individually. We start with the stages at the top of the model in phase 1. The first stage is hardening. The first stage of conflict escalation develops when a difference over some issue or frustration in a relationship proves resistant to resolution efforts. The communication between the parties is still based on mutuality. The basic status of the people involved as responsible human beings is recognized, and one tries to be fair in the interactions between the parties. Stage 2 is debates and polemics. The threshold to stage 2 is taken when one or both counterparties lose faith in the possibility of solving the problem through straight and fair discussions. The discussions tend to develop into verbal confrontations. The 2 parties are still partly committed to common goals and interests, and are therefore caught between respect for the organization's goals and values and competition with the other counterparty. Stage 3 is actions, not words. The threshold to stage 3 is taken when one of the counterparties feels that further talking is useless and starts acting without consulting the other side. The most important goal at this stage is to block the counterparty from reaching his goal and to push through one's own interests. The counterparties in the conflict see each other as competitors. Stage 4 is images and coalitions. The threshold to stage 4 is taken when the conflict is no longer about concrete issues, but about victory or defeat. The causes of the conflict are no longer seen in terms of incompatible standpoints, but as rooted in the very character of the counterparty. A typical form of interaction at this stage is deniable punishment behavior. The counterparty is provoked, insulted, and criticized, but in forms that do not formally infringe etiquette. Since the counterparty cannot respond by openly discussing the incident, retaliatory action is very likely to ensue. At this stage, the counterparties actively try to enlist support from bystanders. Actions to enhance one's image in the eyes of others are planned and implemented. Stage 5 is loss of face. The threshold to stage 5 occurs when the actions by one of the counterparties leads to a public loss of face for the other counterparty. The images and positions the counterparties hold of each other are no longer regarded in terms of superiority and inferiority, but in terms of we are the good guys and they are the bad guys. This leads to a situation where it is extremely difficult to build mutual confidence. Loss of face and ensuing retaliatory acts often isolate the conflict's counterparties from bystanders. This may further escalate conflict because the opportunities for getting moderating feedback about the conflict are reduced. Stage 6 is strategies of threats. The threshold to stage 6 is taken when the counterparties start to issue ultimatums and strategic threats. Strategic threats are actively used in order to force the counterparty to accept certain concessions. An example of a threat is, if your sales department does not come up with proper sales forecasts, then we will stop producing goods for stock. The response could be, we will buy outside the organization. One consequence of this dynamic is that the counterparties increasingly lose control over the course of events. By their own actions, they create a pressure to act rapidly and radically. The conflict becomes impossible to control for the two counterparties. Stage 7 is limited destructive blows. The threshold to stage 7 is taken when a counterparty carries out one of the threats launched in stage 6. The counterparties believe that it is no longer possible to win. It is a lose-lose struggle. Survival and damage limitation are the main goals. The counterparty is now a pure enemy and has no longer human qualities. This may go as far as using words like eliminate and exterminate when discussing what to do. There is no longer any real communication between the counterparties. Stage 8 is fragmentation of the enemy. The threshold to Stage 8 is taken when attacks are directly aimed at the core of the counterparty. The main objective is now to destroy the very existence of the adversary. The only restraining factor is the concern for one's own survival. The struggle to survive increases the stress and the internal pressure within each of the counterparties. There is a great risk that the counterparties disintegrate into fractions that fight each other, making the situation completely uncontrollable. Stage 9 is together into the abyss. The threshold to Stage 9 is reached when the self-preservation drive is abandoned. In the last stage of conflict escalation, the drive to annihilate the counterparty, your enemy, is so strong that even the self-preservation instinct is neglected. The counterparty shall be exterminated, even at the price of destruction of one's own very existence as an organization, group, or individual. Ruin, bankruptcy, prison sentences, nothing matters any longer. The only remaining concern in the race toward the abyss is to make sure that the other counterparty, your enemy, will fall too. Now we shall examine an example of how a conflict can escalate and thus slide down the stairs in the escalation model. The case refers to an ice cream manufacturer who wants to launch a new ice cream, targeting a new customer group. Two key employees from different departments are allocated for the task. Engineer Alex Smith comes from the production department, and MBA David Taylor from the sales department. They are both second in command in their departments. They report respectively to the production manager and the sales manager. It is their first job at management level. The two managers start a series of meetings. They exchange ideas about the taste of the new ice cream, the targeted customer group, sales promotion, production facilities, etc. They have different views about the taste and packaging of the new ice cream. Taylor, from sales, wants to alter the taste and packaging of the ice cream radically. Smith, from production, argues that it is very difficult with the current production facilities. They listen to each other's arguments, but they cannot reach a consensus. They are both a little frustrated. The two managers move rapidly to Stage 2. The discussions about the taste and packing issues tend to develop into verbal confrontations. They see each other more and more as competitors. They both want to develop a new ice cream, but it has to be from their department's point of view. Taylor is on a promotion tour to major customers. Smith starts a production of new ice cream with a new flavour and new packaging. Smith does not consult Taylor. He sees further discussions as a waste of time. The ice cream is neither in the form or taste as different as Taylor demanded. Taylor's comment upon return, "All our biggest customers want something totally new and now we can't deliver. Our biggest opponent is not our competitors but our own production department. They are doing everything to prevent us from success. Smith's response is, "We produce the world's best ice cream. We have many awards to prove this. We need a sales department which is capable of telling the world this fact." Both managers are now using much time and effort telling bystanders within the organization about the other party's lack of understanding of the task of developing a new ice cream. Taylor publishes sales figures for the new ice cream in an internal newsletter. The ice cream is doing poorly against the competition. Smith's reputation is tainted in the organization. He loses face amongst employees. Smith believes that the sales department has deliberately not made any real sales effort. Smith gets his boss, the production manager, to complain about Taylor to his boss, the sales manager. If the sales manager doesn't get a grip on his second-in-command, a formal complaint will be sent to the CEO. The sales manager ignores this threat. He even makes jokes about it, together with Taylor and other employees from the organization. Both counterparties draw the conflict outside the organization. Smith gets old contacts in the ice cream industry to complain about the sales department, especially Taylor, that he does not honor his agreements. Taylor gets a group of customers to complain about the quality of the ice cream. This is Smith's responsibility. They are both trying to eliminate their counterparty. Smith, together with the whole production department, works to get the marketing done by an external supplier. It will result in layoffs in the sales and marketing department and effectively blow the entire sales department into pieces. As retaliation, the sales department works to identify external suppliers of ice cream. In each department, there are now fractions who are fighting against each other about the next move in this struggle to survive. Both counterparties are now so eager to punish and destroy their counterpart that the cost to them does not matter anymore. The sales department discloses confidential information about new products to their competitors. The competitors can then launch similar products in advance, and the production department gets stuck with their products. Production punishes sales by delivering too late or not at all. Sales will lose orders and thus revenue. There is no logic in this last phase. It leads to the company's downfall. It is a race towards the abyss. Let us now look at a personal example. Firstly, we use the model to analyze the stage that a conflict has reached. We then carry out deliberate actions to resolve the conflict or even eliminate the causes of the conflict. We know from our previous example that the farther down the escalation model you slide, the harder it is to resolve the conflict. You should therefore avoid a descent if at all possible. We shall now consider options to cope with conflicts in each of the three main phases of the model. In phase 1, the counterparties should be able to understand each other. The conflict is about a specific issue. They should be able to solve the problem themselves. It requires that each counterparty is open towards the other counterparty's arguments and is willing to seek consensus for the good of the whole organization. Management should not participate in the meetings in this phase. In this phase, management should remind the counterparties about their commons and values. This is particularly important when the parties come to stage 3. This requires that the organization has a clear definition of these goals and values. In phase 2, there is no trust between the counterparties. The conflict is not about an issue, but between the counterparties themselves. Management must help to restore the trust. Management can position themselves as a mediator between the two counterparties or provide an external mediator that both counterparties trust. It is always management's responsibility that the conflict does not continue to escalate through all stages of phase 2 down to phase 3. In phase 3, the conflict is intense. Customers move away. Employees are searching for jobs elsewhere. It negatively affects the reputation of the company. Management have to take action before it is too late. They must separate the counterparties here and now. They may be forced to lay off one of the counterparties or even both. Management always has to take responsibility for the fact that the conflict has escalated that far. Let us now consider a criticism of the model. The model may be difficult to apply in practice. Conflicts are rarely linear. We often consider conflicts as circular, where the counterparties continually try to find a solution and then the process starts again. Some conflicts accelerate very quickly, others take a very long time. The model does not take into account this aspect. Counterparties are not always at the same stage. It depends on how much the issue affects their daily work. The model gives you an overview of where a conflict is right now, and that is a good basis for finding a solution.